There's a profound disconnect in the modern dating landscape, a gap between how we perceive our own value and how we actually project our presence to others. Many individuals, especially those who have spent a significant amount of time away from the nuances of interpersonal intimacy, tend to externalize their perceived failures. They look in the mirror and assume their height, the symmetry of their face, or the number in their bank account is the primary barrier to finding love. While physical attraction and stability certainly play roles in the initial phases of selection, they are rarely the reasons a potential connection falls apart in the early stages of conversation or why a person fails to attract a partner over a long period. The reality is often far more subtle and, fortunately, far more under your control. It lies in the architecture of your social behavior and the psychological framing you bring to every interaction. If you find yourself consistently hitting a wall, it is time to move away from the external and start examining the internal social friction you might be inadvertently creating. This friction often stems from a lack of experience, which leads to a defensive posture. When we feel inexperienced, we tend to build walls using language that is either too distant or too confrontational, without even realizing we are doing it. We see this frequently in people who spend a vast amount of time in digital spaces. The internet has fundamentally altered the way we process information and respond to others. Online, the currency is often disagreement, correction, and winning an argument. You see a comment you dislike, and the immediate impulse is to point out why the other person is wrong. If you carry this digital combativeness into a real world dating scenario, you will find that you are pushing people away before you even have a chance to know them. People do not want to be corrected or interrogated during a first date or an initial meeting. They want to be seen and understood. This is where the concept of affirming language becomes a vital tool in your social toolkit. Most people who struggle with relationships tend to use accusatory or skeptical language as a default. They ask questions like, "Are you sure about that?" or "Why would you think that makes sense?" On the surface, these seem like simple inquiries, but psychologically, they function as microaggressions. They signal to the other person that you do not trust their judgment or that you are judging their reality. To fix this, you must consciously shift toward affirming statements. This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything someone says, but you must validate their right to say it. Phrases such as, "I can see why you would feel that way," or "That is an interesting perspective. Tell me more about how you reached that conclusion," act as social lubricants. They lower the other person's defenses. When a person feels that their words are being received without immediate judgment, they begin to view you as a safe harbor. They begin to trust you. Trust is not something that is earned through a series of grand gestures. It is built through the small, consistent application of affirming language that proves you are a listener, not a judge. This leads directly into the importance of strategic self disclosure. Many inexperienced individuals believe that to be attractive, they must remain a mystery or maintain a stoic, unshakable facade. This is a misconception that often leads to a cold, impenetrable vibe. To build a bridge between two people, one person must be willing to place the first stone. Disclosing small personal stories or opinions, what I call low stakes vulnerabilities, communicates to the other person that you are comfortable in your own skin and that you trust them enough to be open. It can be as simple as sharing your specific reasons for preferring a quiet coffee shop over a loud bar, or a story about a hobby you've recently picked up and why it challenges you. When you share these small fragments of your internal world, you are giving the other person hooks to latch onto. You are giving them permission to share their own stories. If you remain a blank slate, the other person has nothing to connect with, and the conversation will inevitably wither. The goal of a relationship is mutual discovery, and that process cannot begin if you are unwilling to be discovered. However, disclosure must be balanced with the ability to acknowledge the other person's perspective without invalidating it. Invalidation is perhaps the most common relationship killer I see in my clinical practice. It happens when one person expresses a feeling or an experience, and the other person immediately tries to talk them out of it or minimize it. If a date tells you they had a stressful day at work, and you respond by saying, "Oh, that's nothing. You should see my schedule," you have just invalidated them. You have turned a moment of potential connection into a competition. A better response would be, That sounds incredibly taxing. How are you holding up now? This simple shift acknowledges their reality. It shows empathy. In a world that is often cold and dismissive, being the person who offers genuine validation makes you exceptionally rare and highly attractive. This requires a high degree of self awareness. You must be able to catch yourself in the act of projecting your own insecurities onto others. We all have moments of bitterness, especially if we have felt rejected in the past. But if you carry that bitterness into new interactions, it acts like a scent that people can pick up on. You might think you are hiding your frustration with the dating world, but it leaks out in the way you roll your eyes at a suggestion or the way you dismiss a whole group of people based on a generalization. To illustrate the importance of this kind of growth, I want to share a personal moment of my own. Not long ago, my partner and I were out during the heavy rush of the holiday season. I found myself complaining about a store being open on a holiday, framing it as a tragedy for the employees. I thought I was being empathetic. But my partner, who has a different background and more experience with various walks of life, gently pointed out that for many of those workers, the holiday pay was a lifeline, or perhaps they didn't have family nearby and preferred the structure of work over a lonely day. In that moment, I realized my empathy was actually a form of judgmental projection. I was assuming my values were universal. It was an embarrassing realization, but it was an opportunity to grow. I had to acknowledge my own blind spot and adjust my perspective. That is the kind of self awareness you need to cultivate. When someone challenges your view, don't get defensive. Use it as a mirror. Ask yourself, where is this reaction coming from in me? This brings us to the practical application of social skills through gradual exposure. You cannot expect to master the complexities of a romantic relationship if you aren't practicing your social skills in low pressure environments. Think of it like social fitness. You wouldn't try to run a marathon without training, yet many people expect to navigate a high stakes date without having a regular conversation with a stranger in months. Start by joining groups that have nothing to do with dating. Find a book club, a local sports league, or a community gardening project. These environments allow you to practice affirming language, disclosure, and validation in a setting where the stakes are low. You are building the muscle memory of connection. The more you interact with a diverse range of people, the less daunting a romantic encounter becomes. You begin to see that people are just people, each with their own insecurities and desire for validation. Finally, we must address the psychological hurdle of rejection. For the inexperienced, rejection is often viewed as a definitive verdict on their worth as a human being. This is a catastrophic way to view social interaction. Rejection is rarely a personal failure. It is more often a matter of lack of alignment or simply a reflection of where the other person is in their own life. You must reframe rejection as a vital part of your vetting process. If you approach someone with respect and clarity, and they respond with cruelty or unnecessary harshness, they have given you invaluable feedback. They have shown you that they lack the emotional maturity or the temperament that you need in a partner. In that scenario, the rejection is a gift. It saved you months of wasted time with someone who is not a match for your values. Imagine you ask someone if they are single or if you can buy them a drink, and they react with a sneer or a loud insult. You haven't lost anything. In fact, your vetting process worked perfectly. You successfully identified a person you would never want to be with. This mindset shift is the key to resilience. It allows you to stay in the game without your ego being bruised. Dating is a numbers game and a skill building exercise. Just because your timeline doesn't match the one your parents had or the one you see on social media doesn't mean you are broken. The world has changed, and the way we connect has become more complex. But the fundamental human needs remain the same. People want to feel safe, they want to feel seen, and they want to feel validated. If you focus on providing those three things through your internal behavior rather than worrying about your external traits, you will find that you don't have to chase love. You will start to attract it naturally. It starts with the language you choose and the willingness to look at your own patterns with honesty and grace. You have the power to change the energy you bring into a room, and that is the most attractive quality anyone can possess. Continue to put yourself in positions where you can practice these skills, maintain your self compassion when things go wrong, and remember that every interaction is an opportunity to learn something new about yourself and the world around you. By shifting your focus from how do I get them to like me, to how can I make this person feel heard and valued while remaining true to myself, you transform the entire experience of dating. It stops being a performance and starts being a practice of genuine human connection. This journey requires patience and a commitment to internal growth. But the rewards are a depth of relationship and a level of self assurance that no amount of money or physical perfection could ever buy.